Our good friend of the show, friend of the dudes, Mr. Jon White, he posted his latest, his inaugural top 10 for the Kentucky Derby 2023 Kentucky Derby. Obviously, very early on, being that it is, let's say December 1st. This is posted right before this week in November, into November. Posts his top 10, and dude, not only does he post his top 10, but this dude throws some stones on the table and predicts a Triple Crown winner this year. Leading up to this 2-year-old into 3-year-old year, predicts a Triple Crown. Now, the story goes, if you know Jon, you've seen him on the show. He did predict Secretariat would win the Triple Crown, but he also did that like in March of that same year. So I mean, to do this all the way, even as a 2-year-old, I'll go give it to you. You tell the people who it is, and what were your thoughts of this? This is like, love this guy, but man, that was bold.
I'm not sure that's accurate. I think he said Secretariat would win when he was a 2-year-old, actually, that he would win the Triple Crown. But similarly enough, Extra Anejo is the horse that he ranked number 1 in his way too early Kentucky Derby top 10. That was not a surprise. Jon plays in a fantasy league and had the number 1 overall pick, drafting 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, males, females. They do everything in their draft. And he picked Extra Anejo with the number 1 overall pick. So I was not surprised to see that he had Extra Anejo on top as far as the number 1 horse for the Kentucky Derby. What you do not expect to read on November 30th from your friend Jon White is not only does he like Extra Anejo enough to put him number 1, he thinks he's going to win the Triple Crown. In typical Jon White fashion, there were 7 points that he made in this article that I thought were really good. You can read the article at expressbet.com, but I will kind of just summarize some of these 7 as he's made a very, very bold prediction that Extra Anejo is going to win this thing. And number 1, we can go back and forth on this. He basically he was like, look at this maiden special weight win, the one race Extra Anejo has. It was brilliant. He earned a 92 speed figure for it. That's great, buyer speed figure. But the horse just was in a gallop the whole time, as Jon says. And he noted that Marcus Hirsch noted the horse totally galloped out away from everybody through the finish line. So I guess we could start with that. Were you as impressed as Jon was with the debut effort?
Yeah, well, it started off. By the way, I brought up the article. It did say he said on March 22nd, 1973. I wrote the following in my high school newspaper. So it was March of that. He said, going out on a limb and living dangerously, I dare to say that 1973 will be a historic year as Secretariat will become the first Triple Crown winner since the Great Citation in 1948. So he did that. He did do that year.
Okay.
The year of. But to your point, that's still early. But to your point, to do it now is just because you're basically going off of that race that you're talking about, that debut. That's all you have to go off of. I mean, once I start, like, obviously I remember the debut, but once I started hearing his name thrown around there, and we follow his draft that he does with some of the guys at DRF, and once I saw that Jon had taken him first round, I started kind of diving in a little bit more. Like, okay, what is this? What I need to watch this horse closely and kind of figure out what he's seen, and then of course, seeing this, it's like, oh damn, like. Listen, I'm admittedly not awesome at basically predicting what a 2-year-old is going to do as a 3-year-old. And I don't know many people are. It's so hard to tell. I can say that what I saw from him in that race was very impressive. And that speed figure was legit. He beat the hell out of that field, and he never really got out of he never got out of first gear. And the way Steve talks about the horse, and there's, you got to remember, Asmussen, I mean, obviously not only has he not won a Triple Crown, he's never won the Derby. So he's going to have to do that first.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's lost the Derby with some horses that, quite frankly, and Steve Asmussen will tell you this is not a knock. I've heard him say it. He shouldn't have lost that race with some of the horses he's had, like a Curlin, like a Gunrunner. like an Epicenter last season.
Like
so that's going to be step number one. The second thing Jon talked about, he believes, speaking of Epicenter, that Extra Anejo is way better, or much better in his words, than Epicenter. And he kind of just points out, look, Epicenter got a 64 buyer for his career debut, and Extra Anejo got a 92, and he points out ways that he's a little bit more advanced. Number 3 on the list kind of spoke to me directly. He said he's never heard Asmussen speak so glowingly about one of his 2-year-old colts. This is, I can definitely confirm to be true. He is over the moon about this one. And as a guy that's seen pretty much every Steve Asmussen interview since 2007, I can tell you there are times where Asmussen really will speak highly of one and kind of get you going and kind of get you thinking, okay, this is one he really likes. He never really gushes about one this early, and he definitely is all over this horse. So I'm very interested in that aspect of it as well, and to hear more interviews with Asmussen. Number 4 on the list, another Asmussen thing, and this is another one I can confirm is true. He basically says a horse that works out really fast for Asmussen is rare. He is not one to ask his horses to work fast. Actually, it's quite the opposite. He wants a more slower, controlled work. And Jon points out Epicenter had let's see, he said only one of Epicenter's first 24 published workouts was a bullet. Okay, 1 out of 24 was a bullet. This is crazy when you look at Extra Anejo. 4 out of his last 7 workouts have been bullet workouts. So that shows you the raw talent, and that's kind of what Jon pointed out. You know Asmussen too. That's pretty incredible.
Well, yeah, and it's like that's kind of what's so funny about it is the way he works out, the way that he ran on the track would remind you of like a Baffert 2-year-old. We're very used to seeing that kind of horse from Baffert as a 2-year-old. Those freaky kind of performances early on. You don't often see it from Steve Asmussen this early on. These kind of figures, the way, like you're saying, the way the horse is working out. Not to mention the horse is a $1.35 million purchase. So it's like the expectations were there right off the bat, like from the purchase. So, yeah, man, like it's, and hey, December 26th, Malibu Day, sounds like we might be seeing Extra Anejo in the Gun Runner that same day on December 26th seems to be the plan. So we'll fight. Obviously, him winning or losing that race means nothing for the Triple Crown. Long ways to go, but obviously, all eyes are going to be on him as each and every race, because that's the other thing too that has what do we always say about Asmussen? We always say like he can get a horse to the Derby. Like he has no problem getting if it's a decent enough horse, no problem getting the horse there healthy, and he'll dominate. I mean, hell, he'll dominate the fairgrounds races with much less talent than this horse, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
gotta think he'll get him there.
Go ahead. Yeah. And to stay on the Asmussen subject, he said he's got number 5, his 5th point of 7 here. He's got a ton of confidence in Asmussen to be able to get a horse back in 14 days to win a race. He talks about Curlin, how he ran in the Kentucky Derby 14 days later, won the Preakness. He mentions Rachel Alexandra winning the Kentucky Oaks and then winning the Preakness as well. So to your point of what you just said, he has a supreme confidence in Steve Asmussen's training ability. 2 other things. He believes, number 6, that the horse will possess the stamina to get the 1.5 miles. Looking at the pedigree, horses like Affirmed are in the family tree. Alidar in the family tree as well. He mentioned some other horses with solid pedigrees that are with solid distance performances in that pedigree line for Extra Anejo. And then number 7, and it speaks to what you said, we're probably going to see him in the Gun Runner Stakes. So he's going to have 2 starts. And Jon acknowledges that the times have changed. In the past, with only 2 starts going in to the 3-year-old season, that might be a negative. But he fully acknowledges that's really not the case anymore. It's kind of the normal thing. So, yeah, maiden special weight. And like you said, the Gun Runner Stakes on December 26th at Fairgrounds should be next for Extra Anejo. Okay, that's his case, right? I want to know if you agree with what Jon has wrote there on November 30th that he's predicting a Triple Crown winner.
I mean, The best thing, like, sure, like, and even when I asked him about it, his kind of the way he responded was, I think he's going to win the Kentucky Derby, and if he does, what's stopping him from winning the next two legs? Well, a lot, obviously, but I do get the logic. Do I think the horse is going to win the Triple Crown? No, I don't. I mean, it's just, and not because I don't think I think it's a bad take. I think it's a take that's got some major stones, but it's November. Well, it's December 1st, and the horse has made one start, and the trainer's never won the Kentucky Derby. And I get it, Steve Asmussen, and if there's any guy that's due, it's that guy. But it's just like we don't like to play the future wagers because shit, what could lots could change, and the horse may not even be healthy at that time. There's just too much. There's too many also things to consider this early in the game for me to say, yeah, I think he's going to win the Triple Crown. I just don't have. I guess I don't have Jon White stones.
I think let's forget about the injury aspect of it, because that's always that could happen to anybody at any time. That could happen one day before the Derby. So I'm not going to address that. I think everybody knows that that's there. What Jon has basically done, this horse finished as far as an individual betting horse. He was not even the favorite in the first Kentucky Derby future pool. He went off at 13-1. Forte was the favorite at 10-1. Jon's also predicted that this horse, who we've seen once, it's only seen at 7 furlongs, is going to win the Triple Crown. Yeah, it takes stones, and he's put it on the line. I mean, he definitely has opened himself up for some criticism as well. If this horse doesn't turn out to be decent, I don't think he's going to be happy with the result. I don't think this horse is going to win the Triple Crown either. It's hard for me to agree with the comment when I don't even have him ranked number 1 in the class right now. I have Forte ranked ahead of him. And I think to Jon's 7th point, I think what makes this really tough is we don't get to see a lot of these horses before they turn 3. It's more and more so we only get to see them 1 or 2 times. And we haven't ever seen this horse going 2 turns, and that's my biggest thing. And listen, I'm not suggesting the horse should have debuted at 1.16 miles. That just doesn't happen very often anyway. That was the logical thing, to go with a 7 furlong route. But going to that 2-turn race for the first time, sometimes they just don't handle it. And there's no indication that Extra Anejo is not going to. But, I need to see him go 2 turns before I can start thinking about him as far as a talent that can win the Kentucky Derby. But you got to give him credit. And the thing that I really liked about it, he didn't just make the prediction and then go on and start writing about the Kentucky Derby future pool. He made 7 points that all are spot on and make sense, right? So could he be right? I mean, anything's possible, but the article's a must read because the points are pretty much spot on. I don't necessarily think it's going to happen, but I think it's exciting that Jon is so high on the horse.
Well, and regardless, I mean, it's going to create a lot of buzz with this horse. That obviously there was a lot of buzz there, but now the people are going to be watching this horse even more so, and it is kind of nice to see that it's not another Bob Baffert horse that can't earn points. And what does that mean? All this shit behind that. It's like, no, this is a Steve Asmussen, a solid trainer that's never won the Derby. I don't think there'd be a person in the world that would be upset with him winning a Kentucky Derby. And that's just it. Like, for anything, the only thing that for his prediction, like if he doesn't win the Triple Crown, it's like, okay, I mean, that was a good take or bold take, but whatever. But he's got to win the Derby, right? I mean, to me, or I guess if he got second in the Derby and then went and won the Breeder or the Belmont and the Preakness or whatever, like this horse has to win at least one of these legs in order for it not to be like a total just that was great. Like that was just if he horse at least wins one leg, you say, well, Triple Crown's tough. Obviously, Jon. I mean, to even predict the horse would be good in May and June of the next year is a take on its own.
Correct. That's the thing. The horse doesn't have to win the Triple Crown, for us. If he wins 2 out of 3 legs, we're not going to go, that's stupid, Jon White. You know what I mean? Like, if he wins a Triple Crown race, it's going to be a success as far as, kind of predicting, hey, he's going to be really good. And yeah, when you come out, if you would have come out and said, listen, I think this horse is going to be a fantastic horse, it's got huge potential, that's one thing. But to say you're going to win the Triple Crown, it does add that extra bit of, that takes balls, number one, to say, and that opens you up for criticism a bit if something, if it doesn't work out. My last point on this, I think it's a tough year to win a Triple Crown based on what I've seen so far. I think this is going to be a very, very good crop. Somich and I were talking about this earlier. Last year at this time, I had a hard time coming up with 5 horses to put in my Kentucky Derby top 5 videos. This year, I'm having a hard time deciding who to put in them because I think there's a lot of prospects. Jon White mentioned a few. Arabian Night, a very nice debut winner for Bob Baffert at Keeneland at that distance that Extra Anejo started at. Forte looks very good. He's a 3-time Grade 1 winner going into that 3-year-old season. He mentions Arabian Lion, who was a solid second in an allowance at Keeneland. He mentions Cave Rock, a horse that everybody seems to have forgotten about. That horse was unbeatable, as I use my quotation marks for those listening on the podcast version, coming into the Breeders' Cup. And then we got some commenters. Loggins for Brad Cox was damn good when he faced Forte in that Breeders' Futurity. Almost beat him. When that horse grows up a little bit, he's going to be good too. And that's just mentioned in 6. There's others that are waiting in the wings, I think, that are really good. I think we got a good crop coming. So if Extra Anejo is going to win this thing, he better be special.
RacingDudes.com is your home for the best free picks for every race, every track across the country. We're ramping up for the 2023 Kentucky Derby, and we want you to join us in the fun. Subscribe to Racing Dudes YouTube channel, click the notification bell so you never miss a single video. Want to make money betting horses? Bet with the Racing Dudes.